positive GDP growth ahead of the big poll verdict. In fact, the 2023-24 numbers indicate an 8.2% growth as compared to 7% back in the financial year 2023. So, by and large, the message here is that India continues to grow steadily as far as its GDP numbers at least are concerned. There are many more indicators to look at, but GDP suggests positive growth for India. Amitabh Tiwari, our in-house political strategist and somebody who does data crunching for us, is with us in studio. Amitabh ji, how do you look at these numbers? In a sense, a boost to Modi-nomics, if you like, ahead of the big poll verdict?
Yeah, so it clearly shows that India has recovered from the aftershocks of the COVID. Now, this 8.2% is clearly one of the fastest growing GDP growth rates across the world. The analyst estimate was around 7.8% or rather 7%. So, this is 1.2% higher than the analyst estimates also. Even if you go by the previous quarter, this is around 0.4% higher. So, obviously, India is on the path to recovery, and as IMF and World Bank have said very often, that it is one of the brightest spots in the global economy and the global growth rate, and it is contributing to largely the global growth which is happening after COVID across the world.
Right, Amitabh, as you said that India is growing at a fast pace. The IMF has sort of reinstated and reiterated its faith as far as India is concerned. But looking at the big poll issues of unemployment, joblessness, do you think that these big numbers matter when it comes to the people, the voters, the electorate?
No, essentially, if you look historically at the GDP growth rate and the probability of governments coming back to power, you will see that the governments which have delivered a higher GDP growth rate vis-a-vis their previous regime or previous governments have come back to power. So, this is a good omen for, you can say, the Modi government, Modi 2.0, because this growth rate was not recorded in the last 5 years because of the aftermath of the COVID, and we had a negative growth rate in 2020 and 21.
Absolutely. It's an interesting parallel that you've drawn there. Amitabh, thanks very much for joining us with that analysis there. So, positive GDP growth ahead of the big poll verdict. What are its ramifications? What are some of the other indicators? My colleague Janani has more on that.
India's GDP estimates for FY24 continue to surprise on the upside. Now, as of now, we're getting the provisional estimates for the annual GDP from MOSPI, and it continues to come on the upside, like I said, at 8.2%, as against estimates of 7.9%. Now, when we compare this to the last year, it was at 7%, 7.10 to be exact. Now, if you look at the fourth quarter in particular, that is the January to March quarter, we're looking that GDP estimate has come up to 7.8%. Now, the estimates were at about 7%, and one might even wonder what seems to be the key highlights of this. Of course, we continue to see a divergence between the GVA and the GDP. Last time in the third quarter, we observed it during October to December, and we're also observing that in this particular quarter, we're seeing that the GVA figure for the Jan to March quarter has come in at 6.3%. Remember, I said the GDP had clocked in at 7.8%. So while the GDP is a stunner, perhaps lower spend on subsidies could be attributed as one of the reasons for the divergence, which has now become a recurrence from the last quarter's figures as well. What seems to have been the sectors that have led this growth? Chiefly manufacturing, which came in at 8.9% in the last quarter, and also construction, which came in at 8.7%. Remember, these are sectors which continue to perform good for India and its larger infrastructure plans. That's all we have for you at the moment, but what we're looking at is a GDP stunner.